Hello everyone and welcome back to TowerGate. It is day 206, Thursday, September the 28th, 2017. Thank you so much for tuning in. Thank you so much. Well, a lot of news items today. Nothing really major breaking today, I guess you would say, but just a lot of those smaller news items that could turn out to be larger news items at some point. And one really good piece of news, which I'll reveal at the end of the video. First of all, I want to apologize for yesterday's video. It was in two parts. You know, what happens is my video camera, the file will give you 35 minutes. And once you hit 35 minutes, it automatically creates a second file, which means a second video. And so you have to edit the two together. That's why I try to keep my videos below 35 minutes. But sometimes I do go over by a few minutes, which I did yesterday. And I knew YouTube was getting a new YouTube video editor. And so yesterday, once I got the two videos, I went to edit them together, and I got to the YouTube video editor, and it is gone. It's completely gone. There is no YouTube video editor anymore. So I'll probably go out and buy me some video editing software or something like that. But in the meantime, I don't think they're actually going to have a new YouTube video editor. I just think they're getting rid of it altogether. So probably go out and get me some software and play around with that a little bit. But in the meantime, I'll be keeping the videos to 35 minutes, or else they'll be in two parts, which I don't like, and I know you don't like. So we'll try not to do that. So let's go ahead and get started with today's TowerGate news. Steve Bannon, in a recent comment regarding Twitch McConnell, says Twitch is corrupt and incompetent and part of the permanent political class. Yes, indeed. Absolutely, and this is probably another reason why he was forced out. Because, of course, this wouldn't be the view of General Kelly, who is part of the deep state, or H.R. McMaster, or any of the rest of them. And this is what he was talking about, being pushed out. But it's very interesting because Bannon was on the inside with Trump. And, of course, everyone knows that Twitch is corrupt. He's a career politician. He is incompetent and part of the permanent political class. The only thing I'm surprised that Bannon didn't say, and I think he knows this, I'm sure Trump knows this as well, is that Twitch McConnell is purposely involved with the deep state to make sure that Trump's agenda does not succeed. So I'm surprised he didn't take it to the next step, so I'll do that for him, because I think he believes that, I think he knows that, and it's obvious to anyone. There's no way that, I've been watching politics for too long, watching the way that Senate majority leaders operate for too long, and they simply do not set themselves up for this kind of failure. They don't do it. They don't go out there on the floor and hold votes on things before they count the votes. Votes that you see on C-SPAN or that are reported on, they're show votes. They're show votes. Before they ever go out and vote on the floor, they have a head counter. The guy who works for McConnell, he's told, go out there and count the votes, see who's on board, who's not on board. Now sometimes guys will kind of leave you guessing, but most of the time they have a really good idea who is going to vote and how they're going to vote. And there's no way that any Senate majority leader or speaker would allow this many votes. You're talking the two votes on the healthcare repeal, not to mention the two or three disasters that never even made it to a vote. The multiple failings on multiple levels. You don't see that happen, especially with Twitch McConnell. He's been around way too long. And another thing, you know, if Chucky Schumer was running the Senate, do you think that he by now wouldn't have waived the filibuster rule? Why does Twitch McConnell, why will he not waive the filibuster rule? Right now, it requires 60 votes to get anything. And you only have 52 Republicans, two of which are not even Republicans. Murkowski in Alaska and Susan Collins of Maine, they're not really Republicans. They're really Democrats who are in states where liberal Republicans can get elected. But they're not really, certainly not conservatives, not libertarians, not populists, not nationalists, nothing like that. They ought to be Democrats. They essentially are Democrats. They probably vote with Democrats more than they vote with Republicans. And just about all these issues, that's how they vote. And of course, then you got Senator Magoo, who's got a personal grudge against the president, so he's going to vote every time he can against anything he can, regardless of what it is, just to try to shut down the president. And of course, Twitch McConnell knows this. And there's 200, last I heard, 246, 247, 248, something like that. There's somewhere around 245, 250 bills that have gone through the House that are ready to go to the Senate that will not be voted on and will not even be brought up because they all would require 60 votes to get them passed because of the type of votes that they would be casting. They are types of bills that require 60 votes. And so anyway, Twitch McConnell could invoke the filibuster rule, cancel the filibuster so they would only need 50 votes, 51 votes, a simple majority, which of course the vice president can cast the tie-breaking vote. So they could get probably 200 of these measures passed if they were real serious, if Twitch McConnell was real serious about actually accomplishing the agenda. But he's not, and he's not using the power that he has to move forward. And so it's obvious that Twitch McConnell is purposely working to obstruct the president's agenda. So this is the only thing I would add to Steve Bannon's statement, but that's how I see it, and many other people see it that way as well. If Chucky Schumer was in charge, I can absolutely guarantee you he would waive the filibuster rule. We saw Harry Reid do it. Yes, we did. You think Chucky Schumer wouldn't do it in a New York minute if he were the Senate Majority Leader? No doubt about it. The DoD, Department of Defense, estimates that North Korea could kill 20,000 South Koreans in a day, or 20,000 South Koreans a day in a war, and that was before they got nukes. Well, exactly. I would say that figure, yeah. Excuse me. 20,000 a day? Oh, yeah, without nukes. Yeah. But I think they could kill more than that. Maybe they're saying that's an average. Because you have 5 million people literally in a tiny, tiny little area in Seoul, which is not far across the DMZ. An all-out artillery attack with the artillery that they have in North Korea, you would kill easily 20,000. I would think more in the, much more than that, especially in the first couple of days until we could hit those sites. And this is exactly what I've said before. This is exactly why Clinton never hit North Korea. It's why Bush never hit North Korea. It's why Obama never hit North Korea. And it's why Trump is desperately doing everything he can not to have to hit North Korea. Because you are going to be counting the number of casualties in South Korea in the tens of thousands. And they're going to add up like that during the day. You could be looking at, 100,000 people in Seoul killed within a week, 2 weeks easily before you can get, before you can take out all those missile sites and all those artillery pieces that Kim Jong-un has sitting right there on the border, dug in. Remember, these pieces are heavily dug in to the terrain. They're very, very difficult to take out. It will take, several weeks of really root canal to take those sites out. In the meantime, every one that hits, you're killing hundreds of people. And he can launch thousands of these missiles every day. So yes, you are talking about, I'd say that's a conservative estimate. But now you know why we have not hit North Korea throughout all these years. Of course, at this time, now they have a hydrogen weapon and are developing long-range ICBM technology. So we've reached a point where it's time that something is going to have to give. And we'll just keep watching. Sean Hannity's very first night at the 9 p.m. time slot was a huge success. He beat Rachel Madcow by over 1 million viewers. And she has been, I guess, doing better than Anderson Cooper on MSNBC, beating him by about, 500,000. So Hannity easily trounces Maddow and Anderson Cooper, and I expect that will continue. And in fact, I expect he'll eventually be 2 and 3 million viewers ahead of those two. He'll probably pretty soon have more higher ratings than both those two put together. Well, the Interior Secretary, Ryan Zink, Trump's Interior Secretary, says that about 1/3 of the career bureaucrats in his department are not loyal to the president or his pro-business agenda. It's a nasty group of people there at the Interior, and a lot of people don't realize this about the Department of the Interior, but they have their own law enforcement agency. I mean, complete SWAT team looking type guys, automatic weapons, grenades, I mean, the whole 9 yards. These are paramilitary type group, and most people don't think much about the Department of the Interior, but believe me, if you own some land out in Arizona or out in New Mexico, you're a cattle rancher or something like that, and these people decide to target you, you can expect the heavy-handed treatment. They will come down on you and come down on you hard. They are a paramilitary group. They are also hardcore activists, environmentalist activists that were put in during Obama's 8 years. And according to Trump's head of that Department of the Interior, he says about 1/3 of these people are totally anti-Trump and against his policies. Now, you would think that you would just say, well, gee, why don't you fire them? But apparently for these types of government employees, you can't just fire them. I would think that you can. The president is the chief executive. The head of the Interior Department works for him. You would think the president could say, yeah, I want you to clean house. Now, maybe he can. Maybe it's just a political issue of, yeah, you know, it's not politically wise to do it or whatever. But I wouldn't be worried about the politics of it right now. You know, these people have to go. It's not just in the Interior. We know what they're doing in the IRS. We know what they're doing in BLM. We know what they're doing in the FBI, the Injustice Department. We know what they're doing all throughout all these branches of government and the bureaucracy working as part of this deep state coup and obstruction. So my advice to Mr. Zinke, I don't know if you pronounce it Zink or Zinke, Z-I-N-K-E, but what he needs to do, you need to clean house. I can understand you can't target 1/3. Get rid of them all. Start over. Clean the house. Well, Chuck Grassley has lambasted the FBI for placing a gag order on the watchdog investigation into James Comey's firing. Now, apparently, he's ticked off that the FBI was originally supposed to cooperate with the Office of the Special Counsel. That's Mueller. There was supposed to be some collaboration and cooperation between them to look into the reasons for Comey's firing. Now, Congress, Grassley's committee, wanted to look into that and do their oversight on that as well. But apparently, when Mueller got together with the FBI to talk about how they were going to investigate this incident, they I guess, made a pact between them that neither would allow their findings to be shared with the Congress. They're keeping the truth of what they discovered from the Congress, and Chuck Grassley is not happy about it. He's asking the question, what is the FBI? Why are they protecting Comey? What is it that they are protecting? Why the secrecy? Well, I assume that's a rhetorical question on Mr. Grassley's part. But I have a suggestion for you, Chuck, right along with many of these other departments that are engaged in this type of obstruction. Here's how it works. Congress created the FBI as well as all of the intelligence agencies, as well as just about every department in the government. If they do not want to allow you to do the oversight that you have legal responsibility for and an obligation to, then what you do, defund them. How about that? How about that, Mr. Grassley? How about that, Mr. Pitbull? Defund them. How can they operate with a zero budget? I would tell Christopher Wray, sir, either you bring your ass in here along with the witnesses and the documents we've requested, or next quarter when you receive your statement showing how much we've authorized for your department, it will show zero. Zero. We will defund you until you start complying with the law. Defund them. My. The rotten Reverend Clinton now blames Giuliani. Another person we can add to the list of blame. She now adds Giuliani for Comey's reopening the email investigation. I don't know. I imagine maybe Comey and Giuliani's paths have crossed, but they certainly don't run in the same circles. Giuliani is a big-time crime buster. He hates these mobs, and he's kind of a crony himself, but really kind of a New York crony. But as a Department of Justice prosecutor, he went after a lot of organized crime. He went after a lot of the very people that Comey likes to defend. I don't see Giuliani and Comey, they just don't seem like two guys who, to me, would be very, comfortable in each other's presence. They're like complete 180 degrees opposites. I don't really know where the rotten Reverend is pulling this one out of her ass, but somehow she is. The fact of the matter is, she should be thanking James Comey. Not only is he's defended the Clintons and their friends for many years, kept them out of prison for many years, allowed them to avoid any criminal prosecution for years. He stood there and laid out the case for Hillary Clinton's multiple, hundreds and hundreds of times, violating the Espionage Act, including transferring 22 special access programs across her private computer network, her server. She should be thanking him. He should have prosecuted her. He laid out the case. Should have prosecuted her. He lays out the case, and then he does nothing. He cuts her loose. She should be in his eternal debt and should be grateful. But she still blames Comey. My. And Giuliani, I don't know if Giuliani even knows Comey. Their paths may have crossed at some point, but I think Comey's primarily been a Washington, inside D.C. Part of the Justice Department, and Giuliani really was, in New York State. He was a federal prosecutor, but for the state of New York. So I don't know. Maybe Comey, I guess, is from New York. Maybe they've crossed paths. I don't know, but I certainly don't think they're friends. And the idea that Giuliani would have anything to do with what Comey did or said or what have you. If Comey was listening to Giuliani, the rotten Reverend would be in prison. Trump retweets a video of Senator Magoo promising to repeal Obamacare 13 times. Yes, you gotta love it. Gotta love it. This rotten Reverend, Senator Magoo. You can go back and find videos of these people constantly lying over and over and over again. It's just you don't have enough time in the day to put up those types of videos. They're just too numerous. I have some extremely, extremely good news to give you right now. And that's good because we don't get a lot of good news lately. It's been very frustrating watching what's been going on. But I think there's something going on here now that's something very good regarding, Attorney General Sessions. And as you know, I have a lot of fun with Jeff Sessions. I am very disappointed and frustrated with him recusing himself from obviously anything regarded to Russia. We've heard rumors that there's, investigation into the Clinton Foundation, the emails. He won't touch anything having to do with Russia, surveillance, or any of that. He's totally recused himself from that, and he's focused a lot on, and you got to kind of give him credit where credit is due. He has been focused a lot on this issue with the sanctuary cities, on the immigration issue. He's been getting involved in the free speech issue, the shutting down of speeches at Berkeley and things like that. So, there are areas where Sessions is putting some energy and trying to do something good. It's just that to me, all that stuff is small potatoes compared to the big crimes that are all around him. And his recusing of himself and turning it over to Rosenstein, a Obama supporter, a Hillary supporter, to me was just suicidal. What he should have done is if he was going to recuse himself, prior to doing so, he should have named a special prosecutor if he was going to name one, and he should have been very specific, and he also should have laid out the special prosecutor to look to the Clinton stuff, the surveillance stuff, and all that. That's just what frustrates everybody. But here is some good news. Attorney General Sessions has now named his new chief of staff. And this is very good news, because the chief of staff for the Attorney General is kind of like the sheriff. You know, the county prosecutor prosecutes the charges and stuff, but it's actually the sheriff is the chief law enforcement official that actually goes out and enforces things that the prosecutor is doing. So essentially, his chief of staff is kind of like the sheriff who makes sure that the Attorney General's wishes and his commands are followed. So this is very good news because of who he chose. And it's Matt Whittaker. Now, I'm familiar with Matt Whittaker. He's great because he's not a inside the beltway type guy. He's actually from Iowa. He spent most of his life in Iowa. He was the Attorney General there. I do believe the Attorney General for 5 years. And he also writes op-eds in The Hill quite regularly. And just to go back and look at some of these op-eds that he has written, let me give you just a gist of some of the op-eds he has written just in the past 2 years or so. Matt Whittaker has talked about the fact that in a Hill opinion piece, he talked about the fact that if you remember, we were talking about the fact that the Democrats and the Hillary Rotten Clinton campaign had been engaged in activities with the Ukrainian government to discredit Trump. And there was official money that was actually used in doing that. This would be, again, a collusion thing, and people didn't give that much playback at the time. But the very thing that they're accusing Trump of doing with Russia, the Democrats in the Clinton campaign were actually doing with Ukraine. And he wrote an op-ed in The Hill talking about the fact that there was not near enough attention being paid to this activity that went on between the DNC, the Hillary Rotten Clinton campaign, and the government of Ukraine. He's also talked about the fact that there could be a strong case made for pay-to-play for the Clinton Foundation, and he's also been a harsh critic of Comey's investigation into Hillary Clinton's email, and has stated in several different opinion pieces on The Hill that there's clearly a lot of wrongdoing that went on with the emails, and it certainly needs further investigation. So now he will essentially become Rod Rosenstein's boss. So I don't know what's happened here. Maybe Sessions has finally gotten the message. Maybe he's watched some of my videos. Maybe he doesn't like my impression of him very much and he wants me to stop. But he's probably been reading a lot of things, hearing a lot of things. I know he don't spend a lot of time on social media, but I'm certainly, sure that he's hearing a lot of buzz of people asking the same questions we ask here at TowerGate all the time about why is he seemingly immune to this crime wave that's going on around him. And I don't think he's immune to it. I just think it's such a big job that it's so much stuff that he doesn't probably know exactly how to get a handle on it. He's kind of new in the job, probably trying to find his footing, and this thing got away from him because he had to recuse himself. But it looks like he's making amends because the person who he's now selected as chief of staff, who's essentially going to be the new sheriff in town, who's going to be looking over things at the Justice Department and making sure that things are done correctly according to the law, no games. And this guy's a good conservative. He's a strong conservative. He's known for being a guy that speaks his mind, supposedly can't be bought, not part of the deep state, very much an outsider. So he's there in that position. I don't know exactly what date he'll be sworn in, but he's going to be Rosenstein's boss. He has also commented on the fact that he thinks that this investigation with Rosenstein needs to be very clearly defined. He already thinks Rosenstein has gone beyond the bounds looking into tax records, taking this into Manafort's case. In fact, he suggested that if what he's looking to with Manafort is tax evasion and stuff like that, then that doesn't require a special prosecutor who is supposed to be looking into Russia and all things Russia and Russian hacking and things and such. He makes the case that, hey, that should be handled by, the Attorney General in the state where Manafort lives or works or where the crime would have been committed. It should be something handled by in the state. This shouldn't even be part of Mueller's probe. So we can expect now that as soon as Mr. Whittaker is sworn in, he's going to rein in Mr. Rosenstein. He's also probably going to be giving more directives for those State Department people in there, and probably one of the main jobs he's probably going to have is sniffing out the people in there who are obstructing and creating the problems, not allowing these real investigations to move forward. And so we may finally start to see some movement in all these areas. Now, anyone can be co-opted by the deep state, but at this time there is a reason to be very happy, to be optimistic about Matt Whittaker. Everything I can learn about him at this point, and I have read a couple of his op-eds. I didn't really know who he was. I thought he was a journalist, but he's not really a journalist. He's actually a, he's a businessman. He's an Iowan. Apparently was a great football player. Played for Iowa, I guess. Was the attorney general there, now a private businessman, and now back working for Jeff Sessions as his chief of staff, the new sheriff in town. So this is really good news, and it looks like what Sessions has done, based on all the writings, all the things that have been written about what this guy has been talking about. Sessions would have to have known about all these opinion pieces before he would have him in for an interview or name him as his chief of staff. So clearly Sessions knows what Mr. Whittaker's opinions are on the various matters we just discussed. And the fact that he would bring him in and make him his sheriff means that he obviously understands a lot of people are very frustrated, including the president, with the way things are being done at the Justice Department. And so now we can hopefully see some movement in the correct direction. We might be waking up Jeff Sessions. In fact, here's a promise to you, Mr. Sessions. Start taking some action, and I'll stop making fun of you. How about that? BuzzFeed, and again, this is by Chuck Ross at the Daily Caller. Absolutely, Chuck Ross is on this story. I'm telling you, watch Chuck Ross closely. He is all over the story. He's really the main source. Whenever I'm talking to you about this this particular case, it's Chuck Ross who's really the guy who's all over this. So he's doing a really good job. And so he's following these court cases very closely, both in the UK, and I'm talking about the court case and the lawsuit against BuzzFeed by Mr. Gubarev, and now Mr. Carter, and now Alpha Bank. So it appears that BuzzFeed had gone to court and asked a federal judge to force Comey and Clapper to testify about the dossier. Now, apparently they had been subpoenaed, and they were supposed to appear in court about a week ago, but instead of appearing in court, they both sent written statements explaining why they would not be appearing in court. And apparently they were leaning on some old rule which states that, well, these are issues that were taken up when they were in the government, but now they're not in the government anymore, so that they no longer have to comply. But apparently Mr. Gubarev's attorneys, BuzzFeed's attorneys, are not going to just take that lying down. They're going to actually push back on this a bit. Both have refused to comply with the subpoenas, according to a motion filed in federal court on Wednesday. BuzzFeed is seeking testimony from Comey and Clapper to bolster its defense in a federal defamation lawsuit filed by Russian tech executive Alexei Gubarev. Yeah, BuzzFeed wants Comey and Clapper to come in and testify under oath in a civil court, under oath, and say what they've been saying when they've been testifying in Congress or what they've been saying on TV. And neither of them want to do it. Neither of them want to do it, because they certainly don't want to get themselves caught up in a civil suit, and they certainly don't want to say anything under oath in front of a jury in a federal civil court hearing. Lying to the Congress is one thing. Spinning the Congress is one thing, because the Congress is not serious, and they're playing the game on us. I can assure you, Mr. Gubarev's attorneys, BuzzFeed's attorneys, probably the judge and the jury, they would not receive the same type of treatment, and they know it. That's why Comey and Clapper don't want to get anywhere near a federal courtroom and a civil suit. We will see what Devin Nunes' next move will be, because they ignored those subpoenas. They did not show. He said he would hold them in contempt. I expect that's what they'll do. Now, what can they do once they hold them in contempt? I'm not sure. I guess we're going to find out. New numbers in say that the illegals in the country are costing us $135 billion each year. Well, I heard 10 years ago that there was $150 billion, like many years ago. So I think it's quite a bit more than $135 billion. But even if it's only $135 billion, this is what I'm talking about when I say the wall will pay for itself. When you stop the illegal immigration, you save so much money. It's billions and billions and billions of dollars The wall pays for itself. Secure the border. $135 billion. That's your money. It's your money and mine. Trump preparing an executive order allowing the purchase of health care across state lines. This is absolutely marvelous. Absolutely marvelous. Let me tell you why. Because this tells you that Trump is working with Rand Paul. He's trying to get Rand Paul to come to his side. But Rand Paul's got some things he wants. And a couple of the things that Rand Paul wants are very, very good. This is one of them. This is the ultimate backbreaker. This is the backbreaker. This is the thing that nobody has been able to get done. That Twitch McConnell and Big Ears Ryan do not have the courage to stand up to the big insurance companies to make this happen. It appears that Trump is going to try to do it through executive order. If he can do that and make it stick, believe me, this is as good as repealing Obamacare. Absolutely. Absolutely. And there's a couple other things that Rand Paul is talking about with these co-ops. If you could just do those two things, get those co-ops that Rand Paul is talking about, and also if you can finally open up all 50 states and allow all 50 states to compete against each other and allow people to buy insurance across state lines, those two things alone would essentially nullify Obamacare. They would nullify it because no one would do Obamacare, because you can go to a local doctor, you can set up your own cooperative in every community, and the cost will go way down. You would have your own doctor. I should probably do just a separate video on the benefits of this particular thing. I don't talk much about the healthcare issue, but I should probably do that at some point because this is fantastic. This is really good news. So we have some really good news today, and I'm happy to finally be able to report some good news to you. This is a great piece of news, and so is the previous story with Jeff Sessions bringing a new sheriff into town to get control of this out-of-control fiasco that's going on with Uncle Bob and the deep state. Rein it in, Jeff. Rein it in. And I'll be nice to you. Well, folks, about to run out of time. Thank you so much for tuning in. TowerGate, day 206, Thursday, September 28th, 2017. Thank you so much for tuning in. I'll look forward to being back with you tomorrow for Fun Friday. Thank you all. Good night.